2011, I was like the biggest trader in the bank there. And I went back in and I knew they weren't going to let me be a trader. And then they had the little seat for me in the corner. They had a little seat for me in the corner, around the corner, working in some fucking admin team or something with like a bunch of these guys that look like they've hated their job for 30 years and like all of the life is gone, the grey, what have I called him in the book? Gerald Gunt is his name in the book. And this guy gave me like a load of the world's most boring spreadsheet work to do. And I sat down there in the corner of the trading floor and I thought, this is it, is it? This is what they've got. Like, they think they're going to take me out of this with fucking spreadsheet work. So it was like a month's worth of spreadsheet work, like an enormous amount. And I did it in 5 minutes. I did like the shittest job you could ever do, because I was trying to be fired, right? And I spent the rest of the week studying Japanese, and I was learning to draw, actually. I started to draw pictures of the Beatles. I had a big Beatles phase in Japan. I don't know why. I still like the Beatles. I was learning, like, drawing pictures of fucking Ringo Starr and studying Japanese. And people would be like, oh, that's a good drawing. And they would be super confused, what's he doing? I got called into a meeting with Gerald Gunt, is his name in the book. And he was like, can you show me a spreadsheet work? And I was like, here you go. And it was obvious, like the shittest job you could ever imagine. He's looking at it like, is this it? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. He's like, is that what you've done? And I'm like, yeah, that's all I've done. And then he was like, it's not good enough. And I was like, well, maybe your explanation wasn't good enough. And then they realized, like, if what we're trying to do is not fire him, but then we can't fucking force him to do work because we'll just do a shit job, basically. So then they realized they couldn't do nothing. And then it was funny. You kind of like, you stared the demon in the face. And then I realized that actually I had kind of the best job in the world, because I was getting paid 120 grand a year back in 2013. My housing was paid for, nice house. All I had to do was go into the office for like an hour, 2 hours a day, study Japanese, print off my documents for my lawyers. There was a really nice spicy ramen place near the restaurant. I'd go there, have this super spicy ramen, and then I would just go home and go to bed every day. And by then I spoke fluent Japanese. I had a Japanese girlfriend. So it was kind of, it's sort of a message of what happens when you sort of lean into your failure. And it was quite comedic, to be honest. And I sat on that for a good 6 months, basically. And I figured that I could probably leave whenever I wanted. But then the management, HR called me in and was like, why haven't you applied to leave yet? And I was like, well, actually, I'm having quite a good time. And then they were like, we think you should apply to leave. So I applied to leave and they rejected it. And I think what they wanted to show me was, listen, you can't just fuck around. You have to choose. Like, are you going to walk away from the money, or are you going to come back to work? So the fight was back on, and I immediately broke up with my girlfriend. Started losing weight again. That's when I knew like we had to have a serious fight, basically. Yeah. Because I was happy to sit in the corner for 6 months, but are you going to sit in the corner for 4 years? It's a long time to sit in the corner. I think there's actually a really interesting thing happening here, which is you learn a little bit about class, so I come from a poor background, right? And you don't come from a very rich background either. Correct, right? Yeah. You come from a poor background. If I don't hit it, I'm in trouble here, basically. So your whole job is about standing out. But if you come from a rich background, your dad is really rich, and you've gone to the best private schools, then you get the best job. You know that if you do everything your dad wants you to do, you're going to be a multimillionaire, you're going to have a beautiful wife, you're going to have a lovely house. So the game of the rich is about fitting in. I think this is and having like gone to these elite spaces and then also been from a poor background, I think you see this really interesting thing, which is poor people know if they want to make it work, they have to stand up. Whereas rich people know if they want to make it work, they just need to fit in. There's a line in American Psycho where his girlfriend says, why don't you quit that job? You hate it anyway. Takes his earphones out and he goes, because I want to fit in. And I think this is the life of the rich is, like imagine if you knew that as long as you don't piss your dad off, you are going to be given at some point £50 million. Imagine that's your life. You're not going to fucking piss your dad off, right? And this is the life of the rich, right? They're terrified of being ostracized from their community. So I think that when I stepped across the line, they were like, we're going to come in, we're going to shout at him, we're going to threaten him, and he's going to back down. And I think that is because they come from this wealthy space where everybody is terrified of being ostracized from the community. And I remember at the time thinking, this is almost funny, right? Because like they're shouting at me They think if they shout at you enough, they'll win. And you know, they're doing the same thing on the tax thing, right? I come out, very good analysis, very clear. If you don't deal with the growing wealth of the rich, everyone else will be impoverished. And they just think, no, you can't do that because we'll leave.
Yeah.
I kind of went crazy. I remember that's when I started to lose weight. I started to exercise like crazy. There's this massive Emperor's Palace in the middle of Japan. It's about 5 kilometers to run around. And I remember I stopped sleeping. When I was, I had a lot of problems with depression back then. When I was depressed, I couldn't sleep. And I would spend all night just running around this Emperor's Palace. And I was skinny as fuck again. And I decided to just like go fucking mental, basically. And I started to email like the CEO, global head of HR, talking about all of the shit that they'd done to me and how it wouldn't look good in the papers and shit like that. And within like a couple of weeks of doing that, they let me leave, basically.
With the money?
I was able to leave with the money. Yeah, I was able to leave with the money. Yeah, but it was a long fight. It was a long fight. A lot of time. They cancelled my housing. I remember at one point, I had to move out of my house. And there's a guy from Romford. You know Romford, which is a bit further out from Ilford, where I'm from. He moved to Japan because he fucking loved Power Rangers, and he wanted to be an extra in Power Rangers, and he has actually achieved that since. And he had this tiny little like apartment, and I had to move out of this big swanky corporate apartment and start sleeping on this Power Rangers wannabe's floor. And I slept on his floor for about a month in the last final battle of it. But yeah, I got out. And I think it's funny, if you read the book, I've left it intentionally ambiguous. Like, did he actually fight for the money, or did he actually fight because he wanted to do this work about inequality and about trying to achieve, a fairer system and better living standards? But you can look at my work now and you can make your choice, I guess.
And what had happened previous to you going and having a conversation with your boss at Citibank about leaving that made you actually want to leave? Because I would imagine, rewind a couple of years, you were the happiest guy in the world. You were making big money. You were trading.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But this is a funny thing. So the beginning of part 5 of the book, which when I moved to Tokyo, the first line of that part is, Tokyo is a wonderful place to be depressed, especially in the autumn. That's the first line. And it's the first introduction of the concept of depression. And I think or any sort of mental illness, really. And I think it's very easy to read the book and be like, Gary was super successful, and then he moved to Tokyo, and then he was depressed. But I think I was mentally ill, like really obviously, for years before I moved to Japan. Really? But I was in that space of mental illness, which I think is super, super common for like high performing professionals in this country, in the US, in the West, which is you're working really, really, really fucking hard. You're overworking, chronically overworking. You're chronically stressed. And you just totally in denial about it. And you try to, and you see, people deal with it in different ways, a cocaine addiction, or, they're cheating on their wife, they're sleeping with their secretary, you know what I mean? Or they're treating people like shit, they're treating themselves like shit. I think a lot of people deal with this by becoming obsessed with exercise, getting too far into exercise, this kind of thing. I was obviously ill for ages. To be honest, I think I was probably ill from the beginning of the book. And I was ill in that kind of basically socially condoned form of mental illness, which is chronically overworking, chronically obsessed with winning, chronically obsessed with success.
Yeah, because you're successful and the world tells you you can't be mentally ill and successful. It's
exactly.
Or the other.
There's this one line in the book.
So you're getting rewarded all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So there's another guy in the book who obviously had a mental breakdown, really, really, really serious cocaine addiction. The book is called JB. And this guy had the breakdown in front of our eyes. And it was clear he was unwell. And at the time he was at the worst of his breakdown, he and I were like a trading team. And this guy sponsored me a lot in my early career. He supported me a lot, and we didn't always see eye to eye. But when he had his breakdown, I was like, I want to help this guy. And I go to one of the other younger traders called Snoopy, and I was like, hey, should we do something about JB? This is in the book, and then Snoopy turns around to me and he says, don't worry about JB. JB is the richest person I personally know. That's what he said. That's
Yeah.
But it's great, but I think that is how a lot of us think.
Well, it's not Snoopy's fault because Snoopy lives in the same world as everybody else.
Yeah, I think a lot of us just...
If you're rich, you're happy.
I was also having a breakdown and I hadn't recognised it and nobody had recognised it.
Because you were also rich,
exactly.
So everything was great.
And no matter how obvious my breakdown became, and I was very lucky that I dated a girl later on in the book that just came in and was able to see with some more sensible eyes. She wasn't from London, just you are having a breakdown, you're fucked, you hate your job, you need to quit your job.
But you still hating your job didn't realise you were having a breakdown. Quitting your job didn't make you realise you were having a breakdown. Feigning mental illness didn't make you realise you were having a breakdown.
But the mad
going to the doctor who actually said, you're not well was the first time.
But the thing
all
is,
that other evidence
I guarantee you, if you were to go and ask Citibank traders who were there when I was having my breakdown, a lot of them would say Gary faked his breakdown to get sick leave. They would believe that. Yeah. They just cannot. They're unwilling to believe that somebody who is a successful trader could genuinely have a breakdown, because I think to accept that would be to accept that they themselves are kind of fucked up as well. You know what I mean?
On this podcast, we often talk about the smart decisions that shape your life or your career. But when it comes to our health, too many choices are still based on guesswork. Stride One is designed to change that. It's not just another health test. It's the type of service you'd expect from an elite longevity clinic. The home testing kit analyzes your DNA, blood, and gut microbiome, covering over 500 biomarkers to give you a complete picture of your health. You get science-backed guidance like how your gut health affects your energy, or whether you need more B vitamins or magnesium. As well as that, you'll get quarterly consultations with a dedicated Stride expert to help you act on your results. Stride One even measures your biological age with repeat testing every 6 months, so you can track your progress and see what's really working. So if you want to feel, think, and perform better today and invest in your future health, Stride is the solution for you. To find out more and unlock a special offer, just go to getstride.com/RWIH. That's getstride.com/RWIH. So I used to think the secret to getting ahead was working longer hours and pushing harder, until I discovered the power of good quality sleep. And I promise you, that changed everything. These days, I wake up full of energy. I find I'm sharper. I honestly believe I'm more productive. And I think one of the biggest factors for me is the amount of deep sleep I'm getting. And what controls that? Temperature. You know, your body needs to cool down for you to fall asleep. And that's why for a couple of years now, I've been using the pod from 8 Sleep. I have the Pod 5. It's their latest smart mattress cover. It fits on any mattress and it controls your bed temperature from 12 to 42 degrees. And what I really love is the built-in autopilot that learns how you sleep and then adjusts the temperature to keep you deeply asleep. The Pod 5 can give you up to 34% more deep sleep. And for me, I honestly believe that's the difference between waking up foggy and still tired or waking up genuinely refreshed. So if you want to try it for yourself, then use my code RWIH at 8sleep.com/RWIH for £350 off the Pod 5.
But I just think that's, we have all this, like, people say, like, we've moved on a lot in discussion of mental health. I think in some ways we have, but I think in a lot of ways we haven't really. I think, like, in this elite space, it's so normalized. People's chronic, and the thing is, when you people become so hard on themselves, they chronically overwork themselves, and then they are, like, chronically extremely judging and hard on others. And that's exactly what I was like. I was like, I am going to fucking work. You bring it to me, I'll get it done. I'll do it. I'll win everything. But then that kind of aggressive hyper judgment and hyper performance in the way I analyze myself was the same way I viewed others. And I was a bit of a dick, to be honest, but I don't think I was any more of a dick than basically anyone else in that profession. Like, it's just, these are the, like, normalized cultures of our elite workspaces. But, like, what does that do, especially to our young people, our young men and young women who go into those spaces? I think, like, I think this is part of our culture. We aggressively focus on making people hard and making people like, I'm going to do it. But then I think that's partially responsible for why we have ended up in these, like, massively, like, problematic places as a society. Because I think it is our compassion for others that drives us to stand together and work together. Mm. And I think we have created a society where we have these obsessions with my performance, my winning, my success. And then when somebody like me, a top-level economist turns around and says to the ordinary working people of Britain, listen, either you guys stand together or you get fucked. They're gonna eat you alive if you don't stand together. And they turn around to me and they say, we don't know how to stand together. We don't believe in standing together. You know what I mean? I think it's these cultures of obsession with individual performance have actually made the working classes and the middle class of this country defenseless in the face of the rich. Because if the working class and the middle class insist that the way they're going to defend themselves from the rich is fighting them one-on-one, well, they're fucked. These guys are fucking billionaires. You need to stand together. So I think, and that is, again, another big thing I learned from Japan. Because I don't want to be one of these guys, Japan is a perfect country, because it's not. Japan has a lot of problems. And I think Japan's focus on collectivism brings its own problems. But they understand that you need to stand together if you want to protect yourselves as a group.
Whereas, do you think that we're taught to be suspicious of standing together, be suspicious of immigrants, be suspicious of politicians, be suspicious of the rich, be suspicious of the poor, be suspicious of people who are too nice to you, be suspicious of people who are aggressive? Like, you look at the media and it's telling us all to be suspicious of everyone.
Yeah,
then you're trying to tell us to all stand together to have an impact.
I think unfortunately that is true. I think we have trained people to be suspicious, but it's in our culture. You know, the truth is, like, I often feel like in this country, you have to be so careful. Everybody's trying to rip you off. You know what I mean? If you don't, your fucking mobile phone provider's trying to rip you off, and your builder and your mortgage provider and, your fucking car insurance. Everybody's trying to rip you off. You feel like that all the time. But in Japan, I didn't feel like that. I feel like, I don't want to be like Japan is perfect, but I didn't feel like people are trying to rip you off all the time. There's another line in my book where, like, when I was kind of mid-breakdown in trading in London, I hired this like Italian kid to work with me, sit next to me and read the papers. And I was doing really, really well. And he says to me one time, "Gary, you're a really good trader, but your problem is you are too homo homini lupus." And I was like, it's Latin apparently. I said, "What the fuck is homo homini lupus?" He said, "Homo homini lupus is man is wolf to man." And I remember I stood up on the trading floor. Back then I used to wear like fucking hoodie and shit. And I said to him, "Look at all these guys. You see all these guys in this trading floor? Every single one of these guys is trying to pick my pocket. So don't fucking tell me man is wolf to man, because you're fucking surrounded by wolves." And at the time, I thought that was like a good justification of my position. But like in hindsight, it's just the obvious proof of what he's saying. Like, I had accepted that mindset that everybody is a wolf and I can't trust anybody and I'm by myself and I fight for my own thing and I fight to protect my family. But the problem is, I think, like, societally, listen, that might, and if you're in a hostile society, maybe you have to be like that. But I think unless we find ways to change our society so that we can trust each other a bit more and work together, I think we're going to be in a really bad way here, because you look at the way things are changing. The super rich get richer and richer and richer and richer and richer. Government's shutting down. The poor are in a terrible situation. The middle class are getting squeezed. If that is the structural direction that you are going, how do we protect ourselves from these very rich people, these billionaires who are growing and growing and growing their share of the pie, if not by standing together? And this is a thing that I come up against in my work. Obviously, my channel is called Gary's Economics. It's an economics channel. But, we do our videos on Sunday mornings, right? So, as I've said, my parents are very religious. And I grew up going to church. And I didn't intentionally choose Sunday morning because it was like a church-like thing. But Sunday morning is that chill morning, when you have a little bit of time to sit and think. And the more I do my work, the more I realize, in a sense, the problem we have is kind of a spiritual problem, in a sense. It's an economic problem, but it's also a spiritual problem in the sense that unless British men and women are able to step back a little bit from that rat race mentality, me against you, that Squid Game, Hunger Games mentality, me against you, me against you, me against the people around them, and recognize that at the end of the day, the people who live on the left of me, the people who live on the right of me, the people who live up north, the people who live down south, whatever, are suffering from the same problems, and we need to fight together with them. Until we can accept each other in that kind of spiritual way in our hearts, then I think we're going to have a lot of problems. And I'm hoping with the work that I do, that I open people's eyes, that we don't have to fight each other like that. And that is something which I learned from my time in Japan, sitting in the corner in Japan.
So you think that getting expelled from school lit a fire in you that got you to Citibank, and that being fired from Citibank, or Citibank attempting to fire you and not pay you, lit a fire in you that took you into that fight?
You know what? I think these two things connect. That first thing shows me the power of the individual and the power of this absolute bloody mindedness. I will not give up. And it shows you, and I sometimes get criticised for some of the work that I do in telling young people to be lazy, telling young people not to work. And I've never, ever, ever once said that. I would tell young people, work fucking hard. I'm 38 now and I don't have the same youth and energy that I once had, right? You only get that for so long, yeah? Fucking use it, take it, run with it. Don't let a penny drop. Win, make your money, buy your house, have your family, take the things you need. But if you do not find the limits of your greed, then that greed will destroy us. So for me, it's about balance. One of the first things showed me the importance of the self, the importance of winning, the importance of inner strength. And the second thing showed me the importance of others and the importance of giving, the importance of being part of something bigger. Recognize that the system's broken. And I think what you see here is when I was young and I have this moment get expelled, I recognize the importance of fighting. But then I come up against this battle with Citibank and I realized like, it's not always about winning. Sometimes if you want to really see the bigger picture, it's about knowing how to lose and knowing when to let go.
And you want us to stand together, right? You think I watched one of your great videos on YouTube and it was entitled How to Get Rich. Most people would have clicked it hoping for a quick fire way of getting rich. And what you actually said was, you need to stand together. Unless you've got a rich parent, you need to stand together.
Yeah.
What does that look like for people? Because I hear what you're saying. I get the strength in numbers, but I wouldn't even know how to start standing together with other people to have impact in society.
I think, so the idea of my YouTube channel primarily is that it's educational. You look at it and you recognize we have a structural problem in our society, which is that inequality is growing. What that means is the very rich are increasing their wealth and everyone else is losing their wealth. Government loses the wealth. Working class loses wealth, middle class loses its wealth, and then you own nothing. And then, you can't keep losing pieces, you can't keep losing wealth. This is about getting your wealth back. So the first thing is you understand. When I say, listen, I know people like to say I'm a communist or I'm like a tree-hugging hippie or whatever. I'm a multi-millionaire trader, right? I made my money on understanding what's happening.
And let's be clear as well, you still trade, right?
I do, I still trade and I still make money.
So you still make money from this system that you don't like.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why you should listen to me, because I'm fucking good at this, right? I know what I'm doing.
And does that bother you morally?
No, I don't think so. Listen, I'll tell you what bothers me morally, right? What bothers me morally is watching a society collapse and doing nothing about it. And we spoke before this, and I know you've been following my work for a bit, Jake. I work fucking hard. I work fucking too hard, to be honest. Harder than I should. And, it's funny we speak about the chronic overwork, and I can see myself going back into those patterns, right? I don't need to do the work that I do.
Mate, I was about to say, are you sure you're not struggling with your mental health if you're working that hard?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, sometimes I do. But you see the effect that we have. You see the effect that we have. Listen, there's a lot of basic financial advice that we can give here. Obviously, especially if you're able to take, if you're good at maths or if you're good at computer science, take or get your kids to take a degree which leads to a profitable job, get a good job. I always advise people don't get involved with this Balenciaga bullshit. That keeps going and going. Don't spend money, save up what you can. Buy sensible things like stocks and shares, global stock trackers, try and get a house. But your audience will have heard all this already. They know the sensible stuff. Obviously, I'm here to encourage people to get more politically involved. And when I say that, I 100% recognise a lot of people don't have a lot to give. A lot of people are struggling and a lot of people don't. And what I always say is, you take what you need and you give what you can. If you're there in the trenches and you're struggling to pay the bills, then you work hard in the trenches and you do what you can. But if you manage to get a little bit of space, that's when I would invite people to come back, get involved with the work that I'm doing and help protect the British public, help protect the working class, help protect the future for their kids. I'm trying to get more Bible stories into my answers. Have you heard the story of the widow's mite?
No, go on.
So, there's back in the day, Jesus in the temple and everybody puts the money in. And all of the rich guys, they're putting all this money in. And then this widow comes in and she puts like 2 mites, which is like the tiny, like 2p basically. Everybody's laughing at her. She only gave 2p. And Jesus says, listen, this woman gave more than everybody else because she gave everything she had. And that's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, I'm not asking anyone to do what I've done, to give up their job and to like devote their life to this, because I know people can't do that. All I'm saying is, if all you've got is like a little bit of time, a little bit of energy, come watch the videos, share the videos. If that's all you've got. If you've got a bit more, then you can try and get more seriously involved. So listen, take what you need and give what you can. Work hard, man. Work hard for your family. I would like to have a family one day, and I'll try and do the same for them. But if you've got a little bit extra, protect your country, protect the future. If you want to see where this goes, look at the 20th century, look where it went then, you know what I mean? Economically, it's going to go to the kind of things you see in India or Brazil or South Africa, desperate poverty. But politically, look what happened in the 20th century, Don't fool yourself into thinking that can't happen again. What is happening now is so similar to what happened in the early 20th century. I don't want those things to happen, man. And, unfortunately, for better or worse, like I have become kind of like a lightning rod for this. And I know I have the biggest reach on social media and I know I have the biggest reach. So I have to work hard. And I do struggle with that balance sometimes. And to be honest, like this year, I'm going to try to wind it down a little bit for the sake of my mental health. And that's the reason I come on shows like this, because I want to turn around to the public and say, come and carry a bit of the weight. Because
how do I do that though?
Listen, understand what's happening. This crisis of living standards is about inequality. Unless you start fighting explicitly to reduce wealth inequality, this gets worse. The only way you reduce wealth inequality is by stopping the aggressive expansion of wealth by the very rich. You know, this is Pac-Man eating everything.
And how do you stop that?
It's got to be about the tax system. Tax wealth, not work. We have a tax system which taxes ordinary people 40, 50, 60%, while billionaires are paying nothing. That's a joke. That's a comedy, you know. But they're going to support that. Of course, billionaires are going to support that. If you don't want that, you need to fight against it. Listen, that YouTube channel is there so that you can channel your anger through me. Listen, I am going to get a meeting with Labour before the election. And if I have 1 million followers, maybe they ignore me. If I have 10, maybe they listen. And I know people are going to watch that and be like, this motherfucker just wants to get YouTube followers or whatever. What the fuck else do you want me to do? You know what I mean? This is a strategy that I think will work. But listen, you don't need to just follow me. There's other guys doing great work. Patriotic Millionaires, Tax Justice UK. There's other influencers out there that I like. I like Jimmy the Giant. I like loads of people. I like Navarro Media. Loads of people doing great work. Understand the ideas. Share it with your friends and family. Follow the YouTube channel. Like, use me as a way to push this. And, you know, I know that's going to sound like a me strategy, right? But I'm trying to support other people building. I wish it wasn't as much me. But at the moment, I'm the front guy in this movement. If you want a fairer system, if you don't want worse living standards, support me, understand the message, share it. You know, and I wish there were 100 other guys I could point you to, but at the moment there aren't. So, you know, if you understand it, make your own videos, make your own YouTube channel. If you're working in a place where you have influence, civil service, government, media, academia, push these ideas. Listen, I don't want this to be like Gary Stevenson's fight. I want this to be the fight of the idea that if you lose control of the wealth distribution, living standards collapse. Because, you know, the newspapers are attacking me and eventually they'll probably get me cancelled and then I'll be gone. But an idea can live a lot longer than a person.